The rain had stopped hours ago, but the smell of wet earth still clung to the air. A single pink shoe lay half buried in the gravel near the woodshed behind Briar Hollow's chapel. 8-year-old Lila Jensen had vanished after Sunday school. No sign of a struggle. No scream. Just gone. Her mother's voice cracked over the police radio, pleading. Most thought she'd wandered off. But Deputy Cora Briggs's K-9, Ranger, wasn't sniffing the woods. He was pacing toward the old chapel, nose low, tail tight, ears flicking back, toward the church, and deeper than that, toward something beneath it. The gravel popped under Deputy Cora Briggs's boots as she crouched beside the child's shoe. It was still damp, glitter peeled from the plastic strap, a cartoon mermaid barely visible on the toe. Cora turned it over in her gloved hand. No blood, no scuffs, just misplaced. Lost, maybe, but not abandoned. Ranger, her K-9, stood frozen several feet away, nose working, body rigid. The Belgian Malinois was trained to track, to signal. He wasn't whining. He wasn't barking. He was listening. Find her, Cora said softly, rising. Go. Ranger didn't move toward the woods like the others had expected. Instead, he pivoted toward the chapel. He skirted the side of the old white building, paused silent on mossy concrete, and stopped at the rusted storm doors that led to the basement. Cora followed, frowning. She'd been raised here, knew this building, knew the basement was mostly a storage crawl. She pulled out her radio. Unit 4 to command. Rangers showing interest at the south entrance. Basement level. Static. Then, copy that, Unit 4. Sending backup. You're cleared to enter. A pause. You sure about this, Briggs? No, but she didn't say that. Affirmative. The storm doors groaned as she pulled them open. The darkness beneath was thick, the kind that seemed to breathe against your face. She clicked on her flashlight and descended, Ranger moving a step ahead of her, his breathing steady and low. The basement stank of mildew and paint thinner. Boxes lined the narrow corridor, labeled with yellowing tape. Candles, 2003, Psalm books, holiday decor. She moved past them carefully, scanning for movement. Nothing. Ranger stopped abruptly at a closed utility door near the boiler room. He sat, looked back at her, then nosed a crack at the bottom of the door. Cora's gut tightened. She knocked once. County Sheriff's Office. Anyone in there? Silence. Then barely audible scratching. Slow. Deliberate. And something else. A whimper. Her blood chilled. She reached for the doorknob. Locked. Dispatch. I need a key holder at Briar Hollow Chapel. Basement utility room. But she was already backing up. A solid kick. Another. And the rotted door splintered inward. The beam of her flashlight swept across the small room. The first thing she saw was a blanket. Faded pink. Torn. Moving. Ranger surged forward and barked once, low and sharp. Cora dropped to her knees beside the bundle and peeled it back. Lila, eyes wide, lips trembling, arms clutching a stuffed fox with one ear missing. She didn't scream. She just stared up at Cora as if she wasn't real. It's okay, Cora whispered, heart hammering. You're safe now. But Lila didn't answer, and then Cora saw the red welts around the girl's wrists. The bruising on her ankles, the tiny zip tied discarded in the corner. This wasn't a child who wandered off. This was a child someone had stored. The EMTs arrived fast. Too fast, Cora thought, almost like they'd been waiting. She stepped outside as they worked on Lila in the back of the ambulance, light strobing silently against the chapel walls. Ranger sat beside her, panting lightly. Rain misted the edges of her uniform. Deputy. A voice behind her. Sheriff Darrell Finch, mid-50s, shoulders still squared from his Marine days, though the limp in his left leg had gotten worse. I need your report in an hour. You'll have it in 20 minutes, she said, watching Lila's mother sob over her daughter's still frame. She didn't get lost. Someone put her there. Darrell didn't reply right away. Basement's been locked since the pipe burst last winter. Church board swears no one's had access. Board has 3 members. One of them has keys. So does the pastor. So does the janitor. Which one you thinking? All of them. He gave her a tired look. One girl shows up in the basement. We tear the town apart. Cora turned to face him. Yes, we do. Later that night, Cora sat in the small room behind the station, watching through the one-way glass as Pastor Warren Hale fiddled with the sleeves of his sweater. He'd arrived at the station voluntarily, said he was disturbed by what happened, offered to pray, offered to help. Cora studied his face now. 61, widower, ran the church for 20 years. Everyone liked him. That made her uneasy. You can't seriously think it's Warren, said Officer Dana Locke, stepping in beside her. Guy baptized half this town. Cora didn't look at her. That little girl didn't put herself in a locked basement. Could have been someone passing through. Someone who saw a place nobody checks. Then how'd they get in without a key? Locke was silent. Down the hall, Ranger barked once, short-clipped. Cora turned. He only did that when he caught a scent that connected to something he'd already marked. The janitor, Billy Murch, lived in a trailer behind the lumberyard. A thin man with a crooked jaw and a voice that always sounded like it was running from something. Cora knocked. No answer. Billy, she called. It's the sheriff's office. Still nothing. Then Ranger growled. Low. Focused. She drew her weapon. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the trailer was a mess. Newspapers stacked in every corner. Rotting food. The stench of body odor. And something worse. But no Billy. Ranger moved to the back. Pawed at the closet door. Another low growl. Cora opened it. Empty. Except a child's backpack. Purple. Mermaids. Inside were zip ties. Candy wrappers. A hairbrush with blonde strands. She knelt, held out a tissue, and bagged the brush. Get a warrant, she told Locke over radio. We're bringing him in. But Billy Murch didn't come home that night. No one saw him the next morning. And by the time they tracked his cell phone to a patch of woods 20 miles east, his body was already cold, face down in the creek, wrist cut, a note in his pocket. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop. Please forgive me. It should have been over. But it wasn't, because when Cora reviewed the surveillance from outside the church the day Lila vanished, Billy was never there. Not once. By dawn, the fog lay heavy over Briar Hollow, curling along the roads and drifting to the low graveyard behind the chapel like smoke from a slow, dying fire. Cora stood at the edge of the creek, where Billy Murch's body had been found. The water whispered against the rocks, red leaves caught in the bends. Beside her, Ranger stayed close, still tracking, still uneasy. Sheriff Finch stepped down the embankment behind her, boots crunching on damp stone. He said nothing for a moment, just watched the current drag twigs downstream. We found enough in Billy's trailer to charge a dozen counts of abduction, he said eventually. That brush, those ties, he did it. Cora shook her head slowly. Then where's the footage of him at the church? He could have gotten in earlier, had outwaited. He wasn't on any tape. I checked every angle. Someone else opened that basement. Finch's jaw set. You saying we got two monsters in this town? I'm saying the only person who benefits from Billy being dead is the person who actually put that girl down there. The sheriff was silent again. But something shifted in his eyes, like he'd already known, already guessed, and was hoping he'd be wrong. That afternoon, Cora visited Lilac County General. The girl was alert now, sitting up in bed, but she wouldn't talk. Not to her mother, not to the doctors, not even to the small therapist they'd sent from the city, a man with two patient eyes and a voice like wet cotton. But she let Cora sit beside her, let her hold her hand. I don't want to ask you about what happened, Cora said softly. I just want to ask about something I found. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a photo, blurry, printed from church footage. A man's back, white sweater, slight stoop. Lila's fingers twitched. Her eyes dropped. Her bottom lip trembled. It's okay, Cora whispered. I just want to know if you've ever seen this man. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Lila nodded. The next evening, the church held a vigil. Candles lined the stone path. Pastor Hale spoke on the front steps, flanked by members of the board and several reporters from nearby counties. Cora stood in the back of the crowd, Ranger at her heel, watching faces, watching the way people clapped each other on the shoulder, whispered reassurances, watched her back, watched her. When Pastor Hale lifted his hands to speak, the crowd fell silent. "We gather tonight with hearts both heavy and grateful," he began, "for young Lila's safe return, and for the soul of William Murch, who lost his way, but whose torment has now ended." A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. Some bowed their heads. Some didn't. Hale continued, voice steady. "We do not pretend to understand why evil exists. We only ask the Lord to carry the burden with us." Cora's skin prickled, not at the words, at the practiced rhythm of them, at the hollow way they dropped into the night air. After the vigil, she waited until most of the townsfolk had gone. Then she approached Hale directly. "Pastor," she said, "I need to speak with you privately." He nodded, unsurprised. They sat in his office, the walls lined with books and old photographs. A clock ticked softly above the window. Ranger lay quietly by the door, eyes open. Cora placed a photo of the blurry, sweatered figure on the desk between them. "She recognized this," she said, "and I don't think it's Billy." Hale looked at the picture. "That could be anyone." "Could be you." He looked up sharply. "I hope you're not accusing me, Deputy. I've given this town my life." "That's not a no." He stood, voice rising. "This is outrageous." She also remembered a smell, Cora said calmly. She said it was old paint and candles. "You ever been in your own basement lately, Pastor?" His mouth worked for a moment, but no sound came. Ranger lifted his head. Cora stood. "Don't leave town." Back at the station, Cora found Locke in the records room, flipping through old facility logs. She looked up, expression strained. "You're not going to like this," Locke said. "Try me." I checked the key logs. Murch was never issued one for the basement. Only people with full access are Pastor Hale and Finch. Cora froze. "What?" Locke swallowed. He was head of the Church Security Committee back in 2017. Still listed as an emergency access key holder. And that wasn't mentioned during the search? Nope. Cora's stomach dropped. "Call up the body cam footage from the night we found Lila." Locke pulled it up. They watched in silence as a camera on Cora's vest showed her approaching the basement doors. Then, just before she opened them, a brief second where someone stepped out of frame on the opposite side. A flashlight, a gloved hand. Not hers, not Ranger's. She paused the video, zoomed in. "That's not Billy," Locke said, voice flat. Cora nodded, heart pounding. "That's the sheriff." Cora didn't sleep that night. She drove. Not home, not to the station, but out past the town limits, where the old orchard roads twisted through dense trees, and the Finch family property sat like a stone beneath the fog. She parked half a mile away, walked the rest on foot. No lights, just her and Ranger and the growing, sick certainty in her chest. The gate was unlocked. The back door, too. She moved silently to the lower floor, Ranger tense but quiet beside her. Upstairs in a closet, she found it. A locked trunk. Heavy. Old. She pried it open. Inside, a white sweater. Church keys. Zip ties. Photographs. Some old. Some recent. And something else. A journal. Her breath caught as she flipped through the pages. Not just notes. Confessions. Names. Patterns. And entries that didn't talk about Billy Murch at all. They talked about himself. What he'd fought. What he'd failed to resist. And the plan he'd made to make sure it never pointed back to him. Until now. He was waiting at the station when she got back. Alone in his office. Reading over a file. He didn't look surprised when she walked in. "You went out to my place," he said. "I did." He sighed. "Didn't want it to end like this, Briggs. You let Billy take the fall." "I gave him the fall," Finch said softly, "because someone had to take it, and he was broken enough not to argue." Cora stared at him. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Because I thought I could control it." Ranger growled low. "You have the right to remain silent," she said. He didn't resist. They kept Sheriff Finch in the county lockup overnight. Not handcuffed, not shackled, just sitting, shoulders slack, eyes hollow, fingers interlaced as if in constant silent prayer. He didn't ask for a lawyer, didn't protest, didn't speak until morning, when Cora returned with a recorder and a file. He looked up at her the way an old dog might look at thunder, as though it had already broken him, long before the sound arrived. "Do what you have to," he said. Cora sat down across from him. "Let's start with the basement." The tapes, the notes in the journal, and the content of the trunk painted a picture more disturbing than anything they had braced for. It hadn't started with Lila Jensen, or even with Finch himself. It started with his father, a pastor before Hale. Sheriff Arnold Finch had run Briar Hollow's chapel for decades. He'd built its foundation with his own hands. And he'd made sure the basement was more than just a crawl space. It was where he took the ones he couldn't save. Boys, mostly. Girls, sometimes. All forgotten, all hushed, under the guise of discipline, correction, deliverance. And when Arnold died, his son didn't turn him in. He buried the truth alongside the body and the records, but he never stopped believing in the sickness. Or the ritual. Do you know what it's like? Finch said, voice raw, to carry that kind of blood and still wear a badge? To preach restraint, but feel it burning in your bones. Cora's mouth was dry. You had a choice. I tried. I tried to hold it back. I built my whole life trying to be someone better than him. I married. I served. But some things don't leave. He closed his eyes. When I saw Billy, sick, twisted, small, I thought maybe if I gave the town a monster, they'd stop looking for one in me. He met her eyes. I never touched her, but I opened that door. They charged him with conspiracy, obstruction, child endangerment, and the desecration of evidence. The FBI took over. Hale stepped down. The town cracked like ice under too much weight. Billy Murch's name was cleared, posthumously. His suicide became a scandal. Some still called him guilty. Others whispered his death was convenient. The truth never sat clean for anyone. And Cora? She stayed. Not because she wanted to, but because someone had to. 3 weeks later, she returned to the chapel. The doors were padlocked now. The board had shuttered services. Hale had retreated to the coast. Rumors swirled about who knew what, how long, and why they never asked the right questions. Cora descended into the basement again, Ranger beside her. Same mildew, same creaking pipes. But it felt different now. Not haunted, just hollow. She moved to the far wall and began knocking on the plaster, one slow beat at a time. Ranger's ears twitched. He pawed at a seam near the boiler. Cora crouched, ran her fingers along the edge. A hidden panel. Behind it, a crawl space no one had ever documented. Narrow, cold, lined with stone. Inside, she found a ledger. Names. Dates. Dozens. She dropped to her knees and wept. The county eventually ordered the chapel demolished. Said it was unstable. Unsafe. But Cora knew the truth. The real danger had never been the building. It had been the silence. The unwillingness to ask questions. The way trust was weaponized. How people wore uniforms or robes or familiar smiles and convinced the world their hands were clean. On the last day before the demolition, Cora brought Lila back to the site. She was speaking now. Not much, but enough. They stood together in the grass, the little girl's hand tucked inside the deputy's. What happens now? Lila asked. Cora knelt, brushed a leaf from her sweater. Now we plant something better. She handed Lila a small packet of wildflower seeds. Right here, she said, right where the basement used to be. Lila smiled, a real one this time. She dug a little hole with her fingers, dropped the seeds in and patted the earth flat. They sat together for a long time after that, saying nothing, just letting the quiet settle. But not the same quiet as before. This one held light.